May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Once again, Christ is risen. A number of years ago, while I was still in seminary, Sam and I happened to be driving by a cemetery the week before Easter. There was a huge banner over the front entrance proclaiming, "Easter sunrise service here on Easter Sunday." My first thought was, what a strange place to have an Easter sunrise service. But then I remembered that the first Easter took place at sunrise in a cemetery, and it all made perfect sense. In Jerusalem, there are two separate locations claiming to be the tomb of Jesus. That's not unusual. There are two locations claiming to be most of the places that are associated with Jesus. Yesterday, I read a sermon, the whole of which discussed the tomb, which tomb was the right location. And I thought, what a waste of a sermon. The location itself is not important, but what happened there is. The two locations are the Garden Tomb and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. We visited both when we were in Jerusalem. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is a huge building covering an area larger than most city blocks. This church would fit inside it very easily and have room for 4 or 5 others in there. The church, the last 5 stations of the cross along the Via Dolorosa in Jerusalem are inside the church. You go to one chapel to see a place where the cross was, and to another chapel to see where they gambled for his clothing. And there are a lot of side chapels, and you can go and be in any of them. You can stand in a long line waiting to go into the little grotto that is supposed to be the tomb where Jesus was buried. Matter of fact, that's been in the news lately because it's been closed off to the public. It was being refurbished and sort of cleaned up after years and years of smoke and candles and stuff like that. So it has reopened recently and was ready for Easter Sunday morning. The church is a very busy place with lots of people and lots of ambient noise. There is really nowhere to go and just sit and be still and absorb what it's all about. Not so with the Garden Tomb. A story is told about one of the keepers of the Holy Sepulchre who was found sitting on a bench at the Garden Tomb. A worker at the tomb knew who he was and asked him why he was there. He says, "Did you finally decide we had the right location?" And the man answered, "No, I know we have the right location, but your garden here has the right feel." Picture yourself early on Easter morning. You are grieving the loss of the one you love, the one you had pinned all your hopes and dreams on. It's early morning. The flowers are beginning to come out and the birds and bees, butterflies are flitting around. And yet you wonder how life can go on. Every gospel interpretation of the empty tomb is a little bit different. Matthew's gospel is an apologetic. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary are both listed as witnesses to the crucifixion and death, the burial and resurrection. In this way, Matthew refutes stories that the disciples stole the body and that Jesus really didn't die. In Jewish law, there must be 2 witnesses to establish any fact. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary are the 2 witnesses, and they vouch for the certainty of the death, the burial, the empty tomb, and the risen Lord. Matthew wants to be sure that we understand that Jesus did not raise himself. Now, there was an earthquake that served to open the tomb, but Jesus was already gone. There is an angel, but he simply is a messenger. He didn't raise Jesus from the dead. God and God alone raised Jesus from the dead. God validated and vindicated Jesus, his life, his message, and his ministry. The empty tomb is important, and the message of the angel both serve to give us hope. But the women didn't really understand until Jesus met them on the path, and they were able to reach out and touch him. Even though the angel had told them he had risen, it is the witness of their own eyes in which they experience truth. Part of the power of the resurrection is in its unexpectedness. Yes, Jesus had predicted it over and over, but none of them had really understood what he was saying. Therefore, they did not expect it. They went to the tomb to be near, to mourn, and to weep. And when they arrived, they found joy to replace their tears. They found hope to replace despair. The angel told them, "Go quickly and tell." When Jesus met them on the path, he told the women, "Go and tell." They went and they told. Why do we remember a man, a backwater preacher-teacher who lived 2,000 years ago, who never held a government position or conquered a nation, who never traveled more than 100 miles from the place he was born? The reason is because of those witnesses who went and told others. That telling has come down through the centuries to us. One minister ended his sermon on Easter Sunday saying, "Maybe you came here this morning looking for Jesus. Sorry, he's not here." I understand the sentiment. I argue the fact. Jesus is here. Anytime two or more people are gathered in his name, he is there in the midst of them. Turn around and look at your neighbor, the person next to you. Look at everyone who fills this place and know that not only has Jesus risen from the dead, but because he is risen, he is here today. Because he is risen, we have hope for the future. Because he promises that we will rise also. We know that our lives have significance beyond the grave. Because he is risen, we can share in his kingdom, both here on earth and in heaven above. Because he is risen, we are called to continue that story, to go out and to tell others, to bring hope to the world. Jesus Christ is alive. He is risen from the dead, and he stands among us. He brings the certainty of life from death, certainty that this world is not our ultimate home, but there is something more waiting for us beyond the grave. Christ is risen.